Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Thinking and Drinking. Today's episode is going to be painfully topical. Yes, you guessed it, it's going to be about coronavirus. More specifically, about the glaring holes that this has exposed in the hygiene habits of people we know and love. So sit back, relax, pour yourself a drink, and if you need to cough or sneeze, do it into your motherfucking sleeve. Let's get to it. Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Thinking and Drinking. Today's episode is going to be painfully topical. Yes, you guessed it, it's going to be about coronavirus. More specifically, about the glaring holes that this has exposed in the hygiene habits of people we know and love. So sit back, relax, pour yourself a drink, and if you need to cough or sneeze, do it into your motherfucking sleeve. Let's get to it. In an alternate timeline, I would be about 2 days away from boarding a flight for a much-awaited study abroad trip to Vienna and Prague. I would be going to the land of my ancestors, eating delicious, greasy comfort food, partaking in art, culture, going to some weird museums like Prague's Museum of Sex Machines. Apparently that's a thing. I would also be partaking in delicious beverages, beer, wine, and definitely not posting about it on my personal social media. But yeah, in case you haven't figured it out already, this is the bad timeline. Just to recap of what's been going on in my life since January. Right around New Year, my birth dad got sick. Somehow came down with gangrene and had to have his right leg amputated, just above the knee. Then, later on in the month, he got even sicker, and then he died. I got the flu for my birthday, because some nasty-ass individual on the bus just coughed right into my face. And, This wasn't just one of those lighter flus, by the way. It was the honest to God, Jesus Christ, am I hallucinating? Or am I actually dead? Either way, shut down and delete all of my social media kind of flus that knocks you out on your ass for, about 2 weeks. And by the way, I tried to teach while I was sick with that flu because, as I've said, I'm a broke-ass grad student and I've got to pay my bills. And props to my students for putting up with that hot virtuosic nonsense. I had to pay my bills, but if you can actually afford it, don't try to do anything that requires a heavy cognitive load while you're dealing with the flu. Who knows, maybe my students were entertained by it. Either way, 14 out of 10 do not recommend. And then goddamn COVID-19 came around, and it was about a week and a half ago that my university's provost decided to cut off all university-related, university-sanctioned foreign travel. That said, I still had to finish up the class that was related to the study abroad trip, including writing an 8-page paper about a topic of my choice. I told my peer review partner that I would sooner get kicked in the crotch by an ostrich than finish that paper, and yeah, she agreed with me because everybody was pretty demoralized by losing this trip. So I called up my stepdad to tell him that I would not in fact be dying overseas like he joked about, and yes, that's something that we do in my family, is we apparently joke about each other's deaths, because that's how we show that we care. He asked me if I was okay, and apparently I went off and turned into a bit of Mount St. Bitchy for a while. I just went off and said that yes, I was angry, no, I was not okay, but I wasn't angry about just losing the trip. I was angry about everything and that. The whole job hunt, the flu, the whole death in the family, all of it. And I didn't know how heated I'd got until he kind of coughed a little bit, and he said, I'm going in for a doctor's appointment, and I'm about to walk through a waiting room, so I'm going to have to take you off the speaker because you're probably going to scare the other patients. So, yeah, not okay. Here's the thing though, yeah, I'm upset about my trip getting canceled, but what I'm more upset about here is that people aren't taking this like it's a big deal. Now, just to clarify, I'm not saying that you should be running around like your hair's on fire, but at the same time, it is a big deal and people aren't taking it seriously. There was a young woman on the bus riding right behind me recently who said, I don't see why people are so upset or so scared. I mean, it's just like a really bad flu. You get it and you get over it. I'll be just fine. Yeah, bitch, you'll be fine. But what about the people who you come across who might not be able to survive it? You know, people who are elderly, sick, otherwise immunocompromised. Yeah, those people do exist. And you can have utterly no symptoms at all, but still be carrying it and then get other people sick. And that's what's kind of unnerving about all of this. Think about a news story recently about a priest in Washington, D.C., who had his church service and shook the hands with approximately 500 parishioners and then tested positive for COVID-19 after, shaking everybody's hand. Think about how many of those approximately 5,000 people fall into those vulnerable categories. You see, you won't exactly know you're carrying it until you're sick. And by then, you'll have had it for about, maybe 1 or 2 weeks anyway. And you'll have spread it to everybody else. Something else that I'm upset about is people who don't have the ability to pay their bills because this is severely impacting our economy. Either because of social distancing that's being prescribed and people aren't going out to do the things that they would normally do, or because they don't have a rich boss who's feeling kind and who's willing to pay for their sick leave. I also have friends who are in the hospitality industry who are depending on big events with big crowds so that they can actually get paid. And in our state, there was recently a prohibition on those big events passed down by our governor. I get why this is happening, but that doesn't change the fact that this is fucking over a lot of people. So, other than exposing the glaring flaws in America's work system and in healthcare, by the way, because you may not even have insurance to go and get treated, because insurance and healthcare is fucking expensive, this whole thing has also exposed just how freaking gross people are. And I'm not talking about the selfishness, the people who've hoarded of all things, fucking toilet paper. I don't get it. Toilet paper for a respiratory disease. I'm talking about snot and airborne particulates. I'm talking about germs. Yes, I'm talking about washing your goddamn hands. Yeah, the guy who gave me the flu on the bus, as I said, he coughed right into my damn face. Just like that. Didn't cover his mouth, just let rip. And to this day, I hope that he's being persistently followed by a flock of angry, incontinent birds. Yeah. Thanks, asshole. But back to the coronavirus. Seriously, it's fucking gross. I have never been more aware of what people do and don't do when they're coughing or sneezing in public. And I'm doing my best to be kind because we're all stressed out here, but it's all that I can do not to throw a goddamn tissue box at them and say, cover your fucking mouth, fool. But, considering that we're having a whole shortage of toilet paper, maybe I had better save my tissues so that I don't have to start wiping my ass with leaves. I don't know. Back to the whole hand-washing business. I like to think that I'm a fairly hygienic individual. I was raised to be that way, and not even 12 years in the Navy, including working with submariners who are their own special level of nasty in various ways. Not even that could change the basic practices that I was raised with. Well, That said, I won't go so far as to call myself perfect in regards to sanitation, because anybody who's dealt with serious long-term depression knows that personal hygiene can kind of go out the window. When you barely have enough energy to get out of bed, you don't think about, brushing your teeth or taking a shower or washing your hair. It's gross, but it's true. You do what you can to survive. That's why dry shampoo is wonderful. Anyway, but even though I may be dealing with depression issues and coming out of that, I've done some quick informal research as to why people don't wash their hands, and it makes me feel like motherfucking Howard Hughes and all of his precautions against encountering germs. So let's go over why people don't wash their hands. Just some things that I've read online or overheard in conversation. Reason number 1. Other people do it, but I'm not like them. You shouldn't have to give in to peer pressure. What the fuck? Seriously, what the fuck? This is like the whole RIP to them, but I'm different meme that's been going around. When you think of peer pressure, peer pressure, yes, I can talk. That's referring to like harmful trends and activities and behavior, not washing your hands. It just makes my head hurt. Germs just won't stay away because you are too edgy to wash. The next reason, I don't get anything gross on my hands, so I really don't need to wash. I beg to differ with you. If you use your magnificent Google skills, you can find an experiment that a bunch of grade schoolers did with some, I think it was sandwich bread, and they put a slice of bread that they had handled with their unwashed hands into a Ziploc bag, and then put one that they'd handled after they washed their hands into another bag, and then left them there for about a week just to see what would happen. Google it, and you will see that yes, even though you don't have stuff that you can see on your hands, there's still stuff there. And by the way, if a bunch of grade schoolers can figure this out, so can you. Reason number 3. I'm not that sociable, and I don't encounter a lot of people, so I don't have to worry about being exposed to a lot of germs. Listen. Even if you're an antisocial bastard like I am, you're still gonna come across germs and stuff like that. Also, not to drag certain members of my family, but I have some folks who I know and love dearly who are guilty of shit like this. When I go to visit them, I see that they're using the sink in their bathroom as a magazine bucket. And there's nothing to dry your hands with, and the soap is as dry as the inside of a pharaoh's tomb in Egypt. There's clearly nothing sanitary going on in there. They're just blowing it up and leaving. And good God almighty. Fucking nasty. Just because you're living alone, just because you're antisocial, that doesn't mean that you have to go fucking feral, okay? And while we're on the topic of not washing after using the bathroom, one of my students told me about this because apparently he caught his roommate not washing his hands after doing his business, and he said, "Aren't you forgetting something?" And his roommate said, "Brace yourself. I know where my dick's been." Yeah. Hate to break it to you, Skeech, but just because your dick might be sanitary, that doesn't mean that your whitey-tighties are, or your jeans, or your skater pants, or whatever the fuck you're using to cover your ass. Just because you're keeping your bits nice and clean doesn't mean that whatever fabric you've got on you is so discriminatory, you know? Also, just in case you think that I'm getting on the case of people with dicks, this goes for people with vaginas too, especially if you're wearing some of that skimpy-ass underwear. Just because you are very careful about what goes up in there, unlike Gwyneth Paltrow and whatever she's selling on Goop, the yoni eggs, or whatever it is. Gross. Just because you're doing better at this than good old Gwynny is, well, it doesn't mean that your clothes are filtering everything else out. And by the way, this is a reason why you should never wear clothes that are right off the rack, right after you've bought them. I spent about 9 months working in the fluorescent hell pit that is Walmart, and in between the manufacturing process and the shipping, you would be surprised at some of the nasties that get on that fabric that you can't see. So, wash your clothes, wash your motherfucking hands. And, I know that I'm sounding kind of pedantic and simplistic, but you know what? I don't fucking care. Just because you can't see what's on your hands doesn't mean that your hands aren't dirty. You can't thoughts and prayers this shit away. Now, there's been a bunch of hubbub about hand sanitizer. I've been in the habit of carrying hand sanitizer on me for a while because of travel and also because I've used a lot of public transit. Recall the guy who gave me the flu by coughing on me? Well, that isn't the worst thing I've seen. A while back, there was this, neck-bearded dude, greasy-ass motherfucker in an Under Armour turtleneck, practically doing a pole dance and dry humping the handrail right next to me. Nobody wants to be that close to your junk, dude, especially not in public. Knock it the fuck off. But anyway. Hand sanitizer is nothing new for me, and it shouldn't be anything new for you either. You can't always make it to your hand. You can't always make it to a soap to get your hands clean. Well, get to a sink with some soap. Yes, honestly, I can talk today. But you should be keeping tidy. However, apparently this epidemic has brought out the really, really sad side of America, and America has reached peak asshole at this point, because there was a viral story about some guy who had hoarded 17,000 bottles of hand sanitizer, hoping to be able to resell them at some exorbitant price point because people are scared. Fortunately, Amazon shut that shit down, and now this guy is stuck with a garage of stuff that he can't sell. Serves you right, asshole. Just remember that you can indeed make your own hand sanitizer. It just needs to be, I think, above 60%. 60% alcohol. Double check according to the CDC. Another signifier, by the way, that America has indeed reached peak asshole is that Tito's Vodka, a lovely libation, by the way, they had to put out a statement on their Twitter saying that you should not be using their product to make hand sanitizer because it does not meet the required alcohol content threshold to be effective. Let it be stated now, folks, vodka is for drinking, not for sanitizing, unless you're talking about sanitizing in the emotional, metaphorical sense, in which case we'll be talking about, that's more of the Russian literature context, and that's not the topic for today. So, how do you make your own sanitizer? Why the fuck are you asking me? For that matter, why are you trusting the advice of anybody who is not involved with this for a job, who has not had professional training in it? Instead of getting your information from some Yahoo on the internet, you're going to want to check out the World Health Organization or the CDC. Get your information from them, because this is their job, believe it or not. That goes for any kind of information regarding COVID-19, by the way. And just don't use vodka for hand sanitizer, by the way. Just don't. Yeah. That's all I've got for you today. So thank you for coming back for another episode of Thinking and Drinking. And if you liked what you heard today, be sure to come back next week for episode 20, where my good friend Steven comes back, and we'll be talking about the best, the worst, and the motherfucking weirdest experiences that we've had in our service in the United States Navy. Have a wonderful week. Thanks for listening.